Invite onto the program Professor Dewald van Niekerk, who is the head of the African Center for Disaster Studies at the Northwest University. Professor van Niekerk, good evening, and thanks for your time. So I suppose it's been anticipated for some time now that we would eventually get here, but after hearing the explanations given by the Minister, your sentiment about the journey that lies ahead?
Good evening, Kathy. Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I don't think there's any major surprises that what the Minister has said. I do believe it's nothing new. We've known about these changes in regulations for the past couple of weeks already. And I do find it strange that they choose to once again basically say the same thing. We have been anticipating this to happen and the end of the state of disaster to occur at some stage. But I do find it a bit confusing as to the proposed timeframes that she's put forth.
And what in particular concerns you there?
Well, first of all, she wasn't quite clear under which law the new regulations would function. We all assume that it would be the Health Act. And the Health Act does not allow for a 48-hour period of public comment. It actually requires up to 3 months. With some exceptions. So I'm not quite sure whether they are somehow invoking the exception rule within that law to allow for shorter period of comment and then to take the process further. What I also find a bit strange is, and also that I think it's unclear, and it was from the briefing, it was also clear some of the journalists weren't quite sure what was meant by the 30-day period. In other words, will these regulations under the Health Act only function for 30 days and thereafter it expires, which in effect means we will only sit with this for a maximum of another, let's say, 40 days or so. And I do find it confusing why they would choose a 30-day period for all of this. Why not sooner? Why didn't a 30-day period expire earlier than the one that they would anticipate going into the future?
You mentioned the extent to which the Minister was emphasizing the feedback from the public in as far as the regulations are concerned. Of course, we've had draft regulations that were gazetted a couple of weeks ago now, and there's been ongoing, submissions around the inconsistencies, some of which have been highlighted in those regulations. I mean, how exhaustive do we need the process to be?
Well, in a constitutional democracy, one would hope that it is quite exhaustive, so that all parties have an input into the regulations and that we literally cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And that is why we have a system set up like this. So I do believe it's necessary. Also, given the history of the regulations being passed under the state of disaster, there's quite a lot of eyes on what is happening. And I think there's a lot of people with different opinions that must be consulted. And this is just plain common good democracy to be having in place. What I don't understand, and what we'll probably see tonight once the new regulations are gazetted, is how does that now differ from the previous regulations, and was the first portion also a consultative process leading up to what we will see gazetted tonight? That is what I'm not quite clear about.
And that's precisely part of what I'm heading to, Professor van Niekerk, because when we look at the previous draft regulations and what the members of the Ministerial Advisory had said, they said that government was not acting on their advice in drafting those regulations. And so it really begs the question, who is informing government and how are they making these decisions? And are some of these processes being unnecessarily prolonged and therefore challenged because we're perhaps not taking the best advice at the onset when the opportunity presents itself?
But I believe you're right in that regard. I don't think they have been following the best scientific advice that they have been given. There's always a political agenda driving decisions by government. That is clear worldwide. But what concerns me still is that it feels like we're playing a cloak and dagger game with government, and that they don't come forth and clearly communicate what this is all about and what is the vision going forward. Now, as an example, the Minister said, let's take the 350 Rand grant. Within 30 days that will expire, which leaves me with a kind of a sour taste in the mouth, in the sense that a lot of people have become dependent on those grants. Surely there must be a more intelligent way of going about and just besides just having a 30-day window And I don't believe that we either don't have all the information yet, or some of these regulations are once again poorly thought of.
Mm. All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Professor Dewald van Niekerk is with the Northwest University.